You're at your old trusty boat. You call my tea sparrow. I'm in the city of Mardi Gras.
Welcome to the Sailing into Oblivion podcast, where we hear stories from everyday people who do extraordinary things. I'm your host, Jerome Rand.
You don't understand Johnny Bacon?
You don't understand? All right, we are actually live. Dabbler, welcome to the Sailing into Oblivion podcast.
Hey, fantastic. It's my first podcast. I don't really know what the intro you're supposed to say.
Well, I'll tell you what, you're cool as a cucumber. Maybe it's those 4 BLs you just had.
For the record, those are 4 broccoli leaves. I'm eating my vegetables, Mom, here out in Jerome Town on beautiful Walloon Lake.
Oh, 2 of
Lots
those are
broccoli.
mine.
2 of those broccoli leaves are Jerome.
Yeah,
Mom.
that's right. That's right. Well, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on here. And I just want to give the listeners a little breakdown of who you are and why you're here. I guess our paths came across many years ago at a lovely little place called Michigania. And then eventually we worked together over at Michigania, teaching sailing, rescuing people, anything and everything boat related. And then made our way down to the British Virgin Islands, worked together there at the Bitter End Yacht Club, gripped and ripped, and then you're still down in the British Virgin Islands. Well, I've been off doing my sailing stuff, and now, today, we're sitting in Jeromestown, beautiful day under the smoky haze of the wildfires of Canada and California. I couldn't think of anything better than to sit with you right now, brother.
Well, that's definitely true. There are a lot of stories in there. That's the abbreviated version. There's a lot of stories in there
Very abbreviated, yeah.
in between. But, yeah, generally I'd say that's correct.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
our
that's
history.
because I knew you when you were a camper, right? I think.
Yeah, but ironically enough, I was...
Better get a little closer to that mic, bud.
Now
Or
that
yank it to
that
you.
we're a sailor, obviously I'm a sailor now.
Scooch that
I
over.
consider myself a sailor, I'd say.
Oh heck yeah, bud! You kidding me?
At Camp Michigania, I wasn't really a huge sailor. And even my
No,
first
you were
year,
in archery,
yeah,
right?
even my first year working at Camp Michigania, when you were not working, I was field sports and I taught archery.
Right.
And what really started me sailing is, I mean, it's kind of a really personal story, but I guess it's a great time to tell it, is that my dad passed away.
Right.
And my dad and me had a huge connection to Camp Michigania, and he was a big sailor at camp, which is great.
Was he a Hobie sailor?
He sailed it all.
He sailed it all. Okay.
Sailed it all. I think ensigns was probably his favorite.
Gotcha.
The keelboats. But that was what we did. And for those listeners who don't know Camp Michigania, the boating program there has
Out of
40.
this world.
Correct. Probably 50 sailboats for everyone. I think at one point I was told it's one of the largest east of the Mississippi. in the
Yeah.
entire United
Privately
States.
owned fleets. Yeah.
And so what's great about Michigania, you're up there with the whole family. And so the kids can do one thing, the parents can do another thing. You connect for meals, you connect for certain activities, but like parents feel comfortable, their kids are supervised and entertained all day long. The parents can go do their whatever, they're shooting guns, they're doing archery, arts and crafts. My dad, he fell in love with sailing. So that's what he did all the time at Michigania.
I didn't know that. I
Yeah.
did not know that.
And so, but I was, for some reason, growing up, I was like a little scared of the water.
Right.
I was a little scared cat.
My old man scared me out of the water too. I did not like boats.
I don't really have a reason. I don't really have like a horror story or anything, but I just didn't love it. And so I've gravitated to other places. And anyway, my dad passed, but we had this great group of friends and people at Camp Michigania. And out of the blue, this one gentleman, Willis Lillard, approached our family and said, I just donated $10,000 to Camp Michigania and for them to buy a brand new Hobie Getaway and name it Lanny after your dad.
Nice.
And, I mean, one of the more emotional stories, I think, that's maybe ever happened to me. And when that boat showed up at Camp Michigania and I was working there,
Yeah.
I was like, well, guess I better learn how to sail this thing now.
Yeah, I guess so.
And so I'll never forget a friend of yours, too, Mike Porter,
Oh, good old pork chop.
took me out for my first ever Hobie
really?
sail and really first ever like sailing experience on Lanny.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
that
that's
was
so
how
cool.
it all started,
Wow.
honestly.
That's where your sailing career started, right there, on the boat that was there for your old man.
Literally.
Dang, dude.
And I was older. I mean, I was like 19. I mean, I haven't even been sailing really that long. Like, I've been on boats, but to actually like know how to operate sailboats.
Because doesn't your uncle, excuse me, he sails. He used to bring like a trimaran up there or something.
Yeah. So Uncle Mark Cadot, my mom's brother. Shout out Mark Dennis Midland.
Boom, yeah.
Sails out of Bay City.
Bay City.
Big time sailor. Done a bunch of Chicago to max, bunch of Bay City to max. The last decade, literally, he's been racing this the Goujon brothers of West Systems fame.
Oh, okay.
Out of Bay City. They started West Systems, Epoxy, built all these crazy boats.
Oh, wow.
They were big time multi-hull sailors.
Okay.
And they built a bunch of crazy ones, but they built this one design, only built one of them called Strings. And that's what my uncle, and then both Goujon brothers passed, and they literally passed this boat onto my uncle Mark and his two other friends.
Oh, wow.
And so they've been racing this around the Great Lakes for the last decade.
Yeah.
The thing is a death trap. He told me this is his last year racing it. Thank God Mark's like 70 years old, and this boat's way too dangerous for him.
Yeah,
so
how fast is this thing? I mean, is it?
Dude, downwind, he told me he's hit downwind, spinnaker up, he's hit 24 knots.
Jeez. And how big is this boat?
I want to say, like, waterline length, it's 41.
Oh, okay, yeah. So it's a big multi-hull.
But it's trailerable.
Oh, okay. So it's got the collapsible
It, like, collapses
outriggers.
in, and it's like no sailboat I've ever seen.
Right.
Water ballast in the hulls. You can bring in and bring out water to be able to balance it depending on what you want. And I mean, you really can't fit more than 3 people on it because there's no hull. Like there's no,
it's tiny.
cabin.
Yeah, right.
It's a strictly race boat for long distance cruising. They race it around the buoys in Bay City, but it's not really designed for that.
It's better
designed
for Chicago Mac.
Chicago to Mac.
Yeah,
but it's also a scary boat to be in Lake Michigan in serious breeze. I don't know how he's done it. My uncle, I think, has a little bit of a death wish. He might have some screws that aren't quite connected in the right paths.
People tell me that all the time.
Well, Jerome, I think you might just be like missing screws. I would make the argument.
What do you mean it's dangerous? It's not dangerous out there.
As he's in the middle of the Southern Ocean being knocked down.
No, I felt the danger. Felt it through to my bones.
So, yeah, I grew up around Mark. He had sailboats. But, like, I never really knew. And I'd been on boats. But to say I knew how to sail and call myself a sailor, that started with the Hobie Getaway Lanny, Camp Michigania.
Right.
That was when I fell in love with sailboats.
Well, you and I basically, we cut our teeth at Michigania. I always think that. I mean, I knew just a little bit. I had a couple of summers of sailing pretty much by myself on a Hobie 16, sort of figuring it out. But to get into the realm of all different types of boats and all that sort of stuff, that was done at Michigania, man. And it's a great place for it. And this lake, Walloon, I mean, geez. Talk about gusty, shifty, strong, light. You get every sort of condition. So I think it makes you a pretty well-rounded sailor.
Well, you could also just go on all the adventures.
Yeah, well, that helps too, yeah.
Night sailing.
Naked night sailing. Oops. What?
Sorry, Mitch. I don't know if we're supposed to talk about that.
It doesn't happen anymore. Just
but it really, honestly, I think that's maybe when I learned the most.
Yeah. Well, it's
really
when you're screwing it up, doing it over again, screwing it up again, and then finally figuring it out. That's how I've learned basically everything.
Oh yeah, you make a mistake, and then you'll get somehow through the mistake, and then you're evaluating the mistake that you've made, and you just think, okay, let's never do that again.
How do we get a different outcome out of this situation?
Well, do you remember when you were my boss at Michigania at boating, and we swamped the ensign?
See, that's
the
thing.
The West Arm?
I think I honestly displaced that from my memory because when I saw your YouTube video about that, which is classic, I remember commenting and being like, I'm glad that didn't happen under my watch. And I think Lincoln texted back and said, yeah, you were in charge at that point, guy. I thought to myself, oh, that's selective memory right there.
No, you know what? I think it's not selective memory. It's a compliment to how well your staff handled I don't want to call it an emergency, but how competently your staff handled a situation.
True, but
I'd say that's great training.
didn't word end up getting back to my boss because the people that saved you were affiliated with the Michigan basketball team or something? Not to name names.
It may or not be true that we did swamp this 24 sailboat directly
Allegedly.
allegedly swamp this 24-foot sailboat in front of John Beeline's house. For those of you who don't know, basketball coach, University of Michigan, 2 national championship games, never able to take home the title, but he
Darn close.
may or may not have owned a house in the west arm of Walloon Lake, and his son, Andrew Beeline, may or may not have rescued some females from that boat that day and brought them back to Michigania while the rest of us figure out how to get the actual boat back.
Gotcha. Yeah. Allegedly. But you know what? To be true though, those are the situations where you learn a lot. I mean, did you look back on that footage and sort of study it and be like, oh, that there, oh, we should have just sheeted out there, or we should have done that?
Well, without a doubt, but that's easy. What that experience really taught me about sailing, and what I think it really did, which I think is valuable for anybody learning any new activity, is that it pushed the boundaries for me. In a arguably a bad way. Like, the boat was fine and we got lucky. It could have been a lot worse, but it pushed the boundaries of what is possible and how far can I go with this. And I think anytime that you do that in any new challenge that you're taking on, any new activity that you're pushing yourself to learn, when you go past what you've previously done, you learn something new.
Yeah.
And when you're able to look back at that and review it, you have then gained new knowledge about what's possible. And when you go do that same activity again, you're now looking at it in a different light. And things that before seemed really challenging now don't seem so scary.
Yeah.
Or
true.
seem possible. And, you know, a great example of that, too. Like, that story taught me a lot about keelboat sailing. But when I first came to work for you at the Bitter End Yacht Club, I was terrified to do a Hobie getaway out of bounds sail.
Oh, yeah.
Around Necker Island.
Yeah. Get out into the outside of the reef. So at Bitter End, just to describe it, I mean, there's a very protected sound where you're never going to see more than a 2-foot wave. And then you can go up just to Eustacia Sound where there's a barrier reef, but you'll get bigger waves there. You go outside of the reef, outside of Necker Island, and you're basically in the open ocean. And now you can be dealing with 10-foot waves out there. And we would take a bunch of guests and a bunch of small Hobie cats and go rip around in there. And, yeah, I can definitely see how that's a little bit intimidating in the beginning. But now how do you feel about it?
That's what's crazy.
It's like the best thing ever.
When I first went down there and knew that we did that, I thought it was insane. I thought you guys were crazy. I was like, my question was, how many guests have died?
Very few.
And yeah, only one in my experience there. No stress anyone.
Well, and that was,
No, that's a joke. That's a joke. We haven't lost anyone.
Yeah.
I promise. But like, that's your point exactly. Is that I did it one time and then I was like, okay, whoa, that was exhilarating and exciting and adrenaline fueled. But I can do that.
Right.
And I just did it. And now, I mean,
Now a
I don't
new
know how many
limit
miles it
has
is,
been made.
but now I've sailed a Hobie Cat to Anegada like 12 times.
Yeah. Have you done it at night?
Well, that is still dangerous, and I'm still mad at you for
That
that
is-
time that you did that.
Oh,
Without telling anyone, and you went by yourself,
On.
and and you just had you was so dangerous.
Part of the challenge. I was so comfortable down there. Yes, I may have done some foolhardy things, but I think
May
it's
have.
far more dangerous for us to
Definitely did.
take the 13.5-foot Boston Whaler around Virgin Gorda multiple times at night. I mean, we did that I don't know how many times together.
Well, only on perfect conditions.
There were a few bouncy ones.
Do you remember
yeah.
the Great Pizza Fire?
Oh, I do. The Great Pizza Fire of 2000 whatever. Oh, my God.
All right, so this is a great story. You guys will want to hear this. So to set
Classic.
the scene, Bitter End Yacht Club, Virgin Gorda. It's an 8-mile-long Caribbean island. And what we would do when the weather was completely flat calm, no ocean waves, no wind. Ocean is
Very rare.
like a pond, super rare. Maybe 5 days a year you get this. So we'd take advantage. What we would do is we would take the Bitter End Yacht Club water sports whalers and we would go like circumnavigate the island and just do a full trip around and maybe plan a stop. So this night we had a lot of people, a lot of friends that were visiting, and so we actually filled up both boats. We must have had like 9 or 10 people with us.
Yeah.
We took out 2 Boston whalers.
Fully equipped, beers, pizzas, all sorts. Luckily,
Pallets.
Jay
lighter
brought a
fluid.
bunch of fish to cook.
Jay
Luckily.
is our like coworker, but just friend, who is from Dominica.
Yeah,
and
local
is the most
guy.
resourceful human you've ever met. Like, if you ever are trapped on a deserted island, people ask the one question: if you ever trapped on a deserted island, what's the one thing you would bring? People are like, knife.
I'd bring Jay.
I'd bring Jay too.
Yeah.
That's the kind of guy.
He makes the man versus wild guy look like just give me a break, bud.
And so Jay's got a full meal of fish for us too. And so we go around, seamless, great boat ride. We get to the beach that we're going to have this bonfire feast. We have ordered like 8, maybe 10 pizzas from the Bitter End Yacht Club pub
Delicious.
that we're going to eat.
Thin crust, man. I love those.
We were all so excited. And you get to the beach and there's a lot of enthusiasm to be on the beach. You've made it. Caribbean island, full moon, like, it's spectacular. It's the things they make movies about.
Epic scene. Epic scene.
Adrenaline is high.
Yeah.
Everyone's kind of running around a little crazy. There may or may not have been a little bit of alcohol involved, which added to the situation. And everyone's doing a little bit of everything. So the pallets get thrown. We make a fire pit. The pallets get doused in, like, gasoline. Actually, it wasn't even lighter fluid. You literally took the I remember, you took the gasoline, like the
gas
spare
tank out of the whaler, yeah.
Yeah, from the whaler.
And I got a little rambunctious.
And it got doused on the pallets that were there.
Yeah.
And then somebody else came out from, without seeing Jerome do that, and put the 8 pizzas that we had on the tower of pallets doused in gasoline. And just set it there as like a place to store the pizzas while everybody gets ready.
Just to like, I'll put these here for a second. And then
Meanwhile,
I'm running off along the beach, spraying a little line of gasoline.
it doesn't even do it justice. He's laying a beautiful line of gasoline directly from the pallets, 50 yards long,
man.
to like the other, not even the other side. The beach is huge, but down the beach. And he's not really telling anyone, but he's done this move before, so I kind of see it happening. He goes all the way down. He gets all the way to the end. He puts the gas tank down, pulls out a lighter, and then just without even giving really any warning.
Well, I
besides
wanted it to be a
maybe
surprise.
yell, he lights the gasoline. And this 50-yard line of fuel just takes off, and it's moving. And everything at that point, I think, slowed down for me because I'm watching this. I look at the line of fire in Jerome, and I look at it moving, and then I look at where it's going, and I see all the pizzas. And I just go, oh, no, the pizzas! But it's moving fast. And our one buddy, John McPherson, tries to run and grab it. I just grab John, and I go, it's too late. And I hold John back, and sure enough, the fire hits the pallets. And
Boosh. Yeah.
all the pizzas are gone.
All of them gone. No, I think we were able to salvage a little bit, right?
Gasoline covered.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, okay.
I ate a slice, and
Yeah, it was not good.
it may have taken a year off my life.
But luckily, Jay, who had brought this huge like kitchen like tray full of fresh caught fish that he caught, and we were able to cook that over the coals.
Not just fish, too, like vegetables, potatoes,
he just
lots of
fully
sauce.
spiced up everything, and then there's grape tree leaves, which are basically like little 8-inch plates, and we ate we all ate fish off of leaves in the Caribbean under a full moon. And I tell you, I think I said it to you that night that that was Mother Nature sort of telling us, "Don't bring your pizzas out here, bud. Don't even do that." And I didn't. I definitely didn't do this on purpose by any means. But it did. It felt like that meal was so much more of an experience than just hounding down a few slices of za.
I mean, look at us now.
Yeah,
We're talking about it
years.
however many years later it was.
Yeah.
I couldn't even tell you when it actually went down, but
Well, we
it's one of those
definitely
memories.
had some very good times down there. My goodness, that place was just. I would have to look through my journals to try and remember all of it, but man, oh man, Cheers to the BVI.
Cheers to the BVI and the Bitter End Club.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's going to be wide open soon enough.
Shout out Richard and Lauren Hoken, opening up in November of 2021.
Yeah.
Come back down and visit.
Get your mooring buoys, get your dock space. Come on and grab a ice cold beverage.
Our buddy Nick Putman, the dock master, you can hit him up for anything you need.
Call sign Tarzan. I hope still. I always like the call signs. You know, a lot of places don't even do the call signs. Like if you got a staff of people together, you got to have call signs. It makes it fun. It makes it a little more interesting.
I think you might have to define call signs.
Call
I
signs.
don't think
So
people know what call signs
when you work
mean.
in a yacht club, people have radios. You got to be able to communicate to the boats, all that sort of stuff. But, you know, I'm not going to be like, Dobbs, come in. What was your call sign?
So the problem with saying Dobbs, come in is also like, what if we're talking about something, you know, like personal?
Yeah,
Or, like,
exactly.
maybe we don't want to know exactly who we're talking about.
Exactly.
Who
Yeah.
knows? Potentially.
Yeah.
It's a public radio. Anybody can be on the
Anybody
VHF.
can hear. You're supposed to be monitoring it.
Yeah. My call sign, though, was Chaturanga.
That's right. Chaturanga. Come in. This is Zookeeper.
That's no big deal. You guys can't see me. I'm really fit. I started the paddleboard yoga program at the Bitter End Yacht Club.
Boom!
For any yogis out there, Chaturanga, it's a pose. That's how I got my name.
That's right. Revolutionized the area.
Jerome's call sign was Zookeeper, mainly because he took care of and managed a crew full of animals.
Yeah. Oh,
And
boy.
tried to keep us in our cages
Trying.
without breaking out. But
Well,
he also wore these funny hats. He wore
Yeah,
these
like
like
safari
safari
hat,
hats
yeah.
that really made him also look like a zookeeper. So the name was perfect.
Love those hats. Pith helmet, for those of you that haven't seen me in it, keeps the sun off the old nose, keeps it off the ears as well, and lets the air through, though. I used to wear like a ball cap when I got down there, and you, one, sweat through it in about 30 seconds, but two, your ears would just get roasted. That sun is just insane down there. But, yeah, so what brings you up here to the great northern Michigan? Now, what brings you back from the Caribbean? Because you're currently working down there right now.
Yeah, I still am working down there right now. And I've unfortunately had to transition from the Bitter End Yacht Club, which was, I think, right up there with Camp Michigania is the most special place I've ever been able to work, filled with magic. And it was devastated by Hurricane Irma in 2017, is still rebuilding. We've hinted at it already. They're reopening in November of this year, 2021. Only have 2 hotel rooms, but they're welcome. If you guys charter in the BVI, anyone listening to this, go visit. They're fully open for Thanksgiving this year.
One
And
of
it's
the
gonna
prettiest
be
places on the
sweet.
planet.
We're
Yep.
going to have water sports, Hobie Cats rentals. They got a bunch of new bars. They're going to have Emporium for groceries. They're going to have Reef Teak for great gear and Bitter End swag. They're going to have a bunch of restaurants and food.
It's
Great
gonna
shit.
be
It's going to be
fantastic.
sweet.
They're back in business.
So come back.
So come back.
I wasn't able, to, unfortunately, to get back with them when I was going back to the BVI because they weren't open yet. So I now work at Oil Nut Bay down there.
Right.
And the reason I'm back now in Michigan is just came home. We have a bunch of vacation. I'm home for vacation. I'm from Michigan. My family's from Michigan. We had a bunch of weddings to go to, and I just needed to, come check out Northern Michigan in the summer because it's a spectacular place.
It is. We're amongst the trees right now, and like you were saying before, that's one of the things that I definitely remember. The BVI is beautiful, the hills, all that sort of stuff, but one thing they don't have are these big, tall, straight, old-growth trees that we've got up here in Michigan, and there's just something about them. I mean, I missed them down there. I always Oh, no worries. Hey, we're back. A little technical difficulty there, but we're still here with Dobbs. It's an old computer. It's been around, not around the world, not this one, but it's been out there. It's seen a lot of rough stuff. So maybe if Dobbs would quit messing with his microphone.
I want people to hear me.
Yeah, I do too. All right, your levels are looking pretty good now. I don't know where we were, so we're just going to move on.
I'm telling you, if I remember correctly,
I was
you were
talking-
speaking about what brought you back to Northern Michigan. And have you talked about that you're from here and like we're at your
Yeah,
parents'
I mean,
house? Does
and
everybody know that?
That's the thing, really. I'm up here staying on my parents' property. It's old farmers' fields and woods and stuff up here. And basically, when I was younger, I used to camp. I had a camp up there originally, and then I camped down on the other side when I was like a teenager and all that sort of stuff. But basically, when I was doing the trip around the world, I was dreaming of like building a more civilized adult sort of camp. Basically, instead of sleeping on the ground, I wanted to be sleeping on a platform in a tent still, because I knew I wanted to be all feel the breeze and all that. And I used to sit at my nav station in the Southern Ocean and draw out diagrams of what I thought was going to be this place and all this stuff. And I luckily had 2 or 3 pictures of this when it was just a very simple campground with just a little bonfire here, and that was it. And so I was able to plan it out, and I still remember tearing up when I got back, and I built the platforms, had the tents, did the wood chips, and lit the first fire, and I was out here by myself, and I just laid down, and I couldn't believe I had actually made it. Like, the whole way around the planet, always thinking of this time, this spot where I'd finally light that first fire and have that ice-cold bush light in my hand, and I did it, man. It's still little goosebumps. Yeah, dude.
For the record, Jerome, I do want you to know that your definition of made it, I think, is a lot different than a lot of other people out there, maybe.
I can understand that. Well, but to me though, this is literally paradise. I mean, I'm self-sufficient as far as, I've got electricity from a couple solar panels and a couple batteries. I could catch water out here if I wanted to.
Yeah, what do you
but,
do for the bathroom?
Well, if I need to water the grass, so to speak, that just is happening all over the place. But, if I got to go number 2, I can go down to the house for that one. I suppose I could dig a cat hole around here, but I don't want to fill this place up.
Have you been showering recently?
Every day, yeah. There's some perks to being. I'm about 500-600 feet away from my parents' house.
Which, if you haven't been here, it's awesome.
It's pretty awesome. My parents they worked very hard, and they've built a beautiful little place up here in northern Michigan for sure.
And they couldn't be more nice or more welcoming.
They love having people. No, for sure. It's just one of those things. The more people, I've always said, the more the merrier, and friction creates fire. And when my older brother Sven's
with all
here,
3 boys being home,
oh my
this
God,
summer unexpectedly, I'm
Sven,
sure she had plenty
he starts
of that.
goating my parents, and then it turns into a screaming match, and then I'm like the referee, like, all right, guys, let's throttle back. That was a good point. That was not a good point. Sven calmed down, and then we all get back to it. So it's it is what it is. But no, for me, there's just something about being able to sleep in the woods, but also, not getting wet from rain, but not being completely displaced from it. I don't do well in 4 walls and a ceiling. I really don't.
Would you give any listeners, who feel a similar way, any advice about setting up a living situation similar to what? Granted, you're temporary.
Yeah.
But even a temporary, or maybe even a full term, out in the woods, would you give them any advice?
I think I would definitely say keep it simple. There's definitely a few little perks here and there that you want to have. It's pretty easy for me to keep a decent amount of water up here so that I can make coffee or make a little food. I've got a little camp stove set up, sort of thing. Although this is the first year where I have not brought any actual food up here, and it's paid off because the amount of chipmunks and things like that are roaming around inside of the tents, because they're not very, they don't really zip all the way. And typically I leave this one open all the time. That's changed. So I pretty much just coffee, and then I go down to the house for food. But no, I don't know. I would say to try and make it unique. Try and use the landscape. I didn't cut down any trees up here, and that you could have easily made this like twice the size, I suppose, but you would have taken out a bunch of trees, and that's no good, because you're trying to, or at least I'm trying to live amongst the forest and not sort of dominate it and make my presence known. Even if you look behind you, there's a fallen tree back there, which would be great for firewood, but I know that all the deer have their path back there, and that gives them a little buffer so they can sort of sneak on by without getting spooked by me. So I don't want to touch it because, it's their little, I'm in their realm. It's not the other way around. At least that's the way I think about it. But yeah, as far as top tips, definitely build platforms, elevate yourself off the ground. That'll keep at least a few of the spiders out. And then, some solar panels, man, because lighting is essential.
That's something I've always known about you,
dude. Well,
you're a great lighting guy. You ever thought about
the whole thing,
the whole
interior decorating?
No, I wasn't gonna go that far. I was just gonna say electrician.
Oh, I don't know about that, bud. Jeez.
Your dad's a plumber. Like, it would be kind of up the alley here.
I've electrocuted myself quite a number of times. It's an unsafe profession. I don't have 100 people. I worked with a guy.
Right, don't be an electrician, folks.
Old Barry Dyer. God bless his soul. He's passed away since then. But we were doing a refit. No. Probably from smoking 3 packs, freaking 100 cigarettes a day sort of thing. But no, we worked on an old 1940 or 1950s Fed ship. I think it was number 47, and we rewired this whole thing. It's like a 120-foot boat. It took us 3 months, and I was his apprentice, and he was doing all the electrical, and I was just helping him. I electrocuted myself 3 times. The worst being when I was told to go.
I don't know how serious these were.
I was told to unscrew one end of a shore cable that I did not realize was actually plugged in. And when that screwdriver hit that ground, it sent me flying. Not flying. I don't think I actually fell down, but I lost control of the screwdriver for sure. And as a parting gift, Barry gave me his little pencil-sized hot detector. So before I touch anything, I touch it with that, and it'll tell me if it's live. And it said, "Son, you're gonna need this." Thank you, Barry Dyer. No, it was a pleasure. He taught me all about country music. He liked old country music because it told stories, and he said you can listen to it like a song or you can listen to it like a story. So we listened to a lot of forget what was
I feel
his
like you're not
favorite.
like a huge country music guy. I think it's more Caribbean tunes and
for me for sure.
Calypso is more your.
But Calypso,
element.
in a lot of ways, Calypso is that same thing where they're telling stories in music form.
I mean, it literally is Calypso.
Well, and in
Stories,
Dominica,
political stories.
that's
social
the
stories.
political
that is
stuff,
what Calypso is
and
based
they just
upon.
disguise it because they'll in Dominica, a lot of that music, they'll be talking about current political things going on in their country, but they're just changing this or that so that they're not actually saying this person's name, but they're calling him out on all this sort of stuff. So everybody knows what he's talking about. And, I think that stuff's kind of cool. I mean,
it's a powerful way.
Yeah. I mean,
especially if you're a very popular musician.
I mean, I pretty much, I enjoy almost any kind of music. Give me some T-Sweet, give me a little Biebs, little Post. I'm all
look at
Billie Eilish
abbreviations.
in my car.
He's been on a boat for years, and look at him.
If you hop in my car, I never plug my phone in. It just goes straight to the radio station. I want to know what's going on locally. There's something about radio stations, and it was funny because I took a bunch of people on the boat the other night, and
on your which boat? Sparrow or the Ensign
on
here
the
on
Ensign.
Walloon Lake?
Yeah, a little 22-foot sailboat. It was a breezy day. Took a bunch of people
We're here
out.
on Walloon Lake in northern Michigan. It's a beautiful lake.
Deep water, crystal clear green. It's so funny because
looks like the Caribbean.
When we used to grow up, or when we were growing up, it was just the most beautiful body of water I've ever seen. And then I went to the Caribbean, and then I came back, and I remember looking at Walloon very differently ever since because there's just nothing like the Caribbean when it comes to aqua marine with just white sand and stingrays and turtles. I don't know. I got up here.
But that didn't make you appreciate it more? I almost went down and lived there and came back to Walloon, and I was like, oh, my God, Walloon is close to the Caribbean somehow in northern Michigan. I was almost more impressed by the beauty of it.
I
was like, this is the Caribbean transported here.
To be honest, I remember one of the first times I came back after doing a season in the BVI, and I looked at the water and I said, has it always been that green and cloudy? And
don't listen, Walloon.
How come there's no wind? How come where'd the wind go? Is it seriously no wind at all?
Jerome's just being mean.
No, I love Walloon. We had a lot of great times on it, but the BVI will spoil any sailor with 18 knots, fresh breeze, trade winds blowing.
You compare anything to the British Virgin Islands for a sailor,
right.
and it's going to be tough to
No,
find better.
It is. It's pretty tough.
So what the people really want to know, Jerome, though, and what I'm assuming, enough of our stories. Where are you sailing next? Are you sailing next?
What's the plan?
Are you selling
game plan?
Sparrow?
Well, let me ask
what
you
happens
this.
going forward.
Trying
with
to
your
put me
boats?
on the spot here on my podcast. What do you think I should do? As a concerned friend for the safety of me, what would you recommend that I do with my life right now?
Are you asking physical safety or mental safety?
Oh, I guess both. They're all wrapped up into one. Yeah, that's a thinker. Do you need a second?
Direct physical safety makes me think.
Now remember, just a couple stipulations. My life raft, it's out of date by years now, but I'm pretty sure it still works. So let's cancel that off. And there's no way I can afford a new one. Other than that, though, safety gear-wise, I think Sparrow's pretty good.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, was really how's Sparrow looking?
She's looking good. No, I had a lot of time to work on her and stuff. There's not much, because the last trip, I only saw really one stint of really bad weather out there. And the boat was pretty much primed to do a circumnavigation. So the boat basically is still primed to do a circumnavigation. So she's ready to go. It's just some of the safety equipment's a little outdated.
Is that something you're going to test? Or is that something you would test if you do go out for another sail?
Well, if somehow I'm able to come up.
I don't even know. Can you test the life raft and put it back? Or
well, that's the thing.
Like
I even went in. Yeah, I went in to see if somebody could just service it, because normally that's what you do. They typically keep a life raft. It's about a 5-year span where it's legit, and then you're supposed to be able to take them in and they service them, and then they slap another sticker on there. But I called these places down in South Carolina, and they were like, "Oh, you should just get a new one." And I'm thinking to myself, "Well, that's $4,000 to get a new one. How am I? I can't do that." I was thinking like $700 services. So I ended up going out. I mean, it was expired when I left on the last trip, but it was just barely expired.
Have you ever researched what's the fear of what goes bad? Like to do it's
pops.
in a case.
Yeah, it pops.
But like I'm assuming it's some sort of like, it's not rubber, but it's some sort of, fabric material. Like, it's not getting sun damage though. Like, it's encased. So does like the CO2 go bad? Does it not inflate? Like, what's the fear of it just deteriorates over time?
Well,
why does a life raft have an expiration date? I guess if it's been unused.
It's just because I don't know. They have to do that for the Coast Guard certification. So all it's flares, sound signals, smoke signals, all that stuff has to be. It's got its little expiration. And I've always thought, and no one should ever follow this as the standard, but that they have to put those things on a little early. It's like a can of SpaghettiOs. They're gonna slap that expiration date on, but you could probably eat it a little afterwards, right?
That's where I'm at. That's what my argument is here.
Right.
Is that God forbid somebody has a life raft that actually doesn't work for some reason, and it's expired 15 years from then, even though that's the actual date that this thing actually stops working.
Yeah.
They're gonna get sued, and no life raft company wants that.
So what they do,
I'm sure
is
it lasts a
shorten
lot longer
yeah.
than whatever date is on that package.
I think so.
And I'm not saying that's
a
good idea to go out with that, but.
Well, here's the thing. I'm basically, if I can afford it, if I can flip the bill at the time, I will just pick up another, like a 4-man life raft and ditch the old one. That'll be sort of the game plan. If I can't, then I'll just take the old one and I'll call it good. I mean, in reality, those things, depending on where you're sailing, they're either going to help you or they're just going to expand how long you suffer. In the Southern Ocean, you're not going to last 7 days in a life raft. It's going to take forever. And, if you're in a fully sponsored race and all this sort of stuff, you've got teams of people watching. They can send out the Mayday calls for you, all that sort of stuff. If you're just Joe Schmo out there sailing around by yourself because that's what you wanted to do, trying to coordinate any sort of rescue with that in those sort of locations, it just takes forever. And it's cold and you're
Especially
wet.
if you need to be rescued, it's not like the ocean is dead flat calm.
Yeah, exactly.
It's obviously some serious weather.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, to answer your question though, without going crazy here, is just the boat's ready. The boat's ready to basically just set off. I need a handful of things, and I've got all the food I need, minus just the normal stuff that like oatmeal and coffee and things like that spoil. I was able to basically hold on to 8 months worth of long life food that I purchased for the last trip. Didn't touch much of that when I was out there last time. Pretty much cans of food and Kind bars is all I ate, which is why I packed on all that weight.
Well, you obviously learned from your first sail.
Oh yeah,
You
yeah.
had to bring more food.
Oh my god,
That was, I would argue,
that was
I would almost argue
unbelievable.
the only mistake that you made. Maybe you could have brought more warm clothing or better warm clothing on your first sail. But other than that, I would say your lack of food was your biggest mistake.
Oh, for
But to
sure.
get back to the original question here, like what do I think you should do? I mean, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, what would you do?
To be frank.
Oh
what
no, I know.
think.
I'm just interested.
But
just interested.
I think that you are happiest as a sailor. From what I've seen, from the time I've known you, which has been, not your whole life, but I think you're happiest as a sailor. I think you're happiest on the water. And that doesn't even have to be solo sailing in the middle of the Southern Ocean.
Right, true.
Your West Sail 32. But from what I've seen of you, as your happiest is when you are with the wind in your hair and the waves splashing your face and maybe a cocktail close by hand, but on an adventure. That's when I've seen you your happiest. And so, do I think you need to go solo sailing on another super adventure around the world? I don't think you need to do that. Do I think you need to be on the water and sailing? Without a doubt. And if that's what
I agree with
if that's
that.
what you're gonna do with Sparrow, go then hell yeah.
Well, there's definitely part of me that I want to, and this is something I sort of deal with a lot is trying to curb any sort of ego trip sort of stuff. And there's part of me that wants to round out my solo sailing career with a win instead of, my trip just around the Atlantic that didn't work out. And I think another pretty big epic trip would be a great way to sort of end the solo sailing, because I'm definitely going to keep sailing, but I think as far as doing it by myself, like you said, I mean, I've spent hundreds of days out there and I've learned so much and I do love it. I mean, I was thinking about it the other night, just the initial portion of sailing from the East Coast to the middle of the Atlantic towards the equator is just, it's wonderful because you ride the Gulf Stream, you go through some bad weather, you get to the Azores high, it calms down. Then you get the northeast trade winds that thunder down past like the Canaries, and you're trucking on down, and then you reach the doldrums. And I don't know, it's just day after day of just living in basically, it's like living in the sky, because all the sky dictates everything that's happening to you. It pushes those waves up, it makes them go away. It brings you stars, it takes them away, it turns nights dark or brings them out. I don't know, it's so crazy. There's something about it. But like you said, I mean, it doesn't have to be solo.
Well, my thing, everything you just said, I completely understand. And the one thing that I want to say, which we've talked about before, not on the podcast, is that I completely understand why you feel that your attempt through the Northwest Passage was a catastrophe, was the word that you used earlier. You said it was a catastrophe.
For me, it was.
Exactly.
For me.
And I understand why you personally feel that way. And as I've said before, I don't think I will ever, frankly, understand what it's like to be a solo sailor contemplating a voyage on a West Sail 32 from the 1970s, trying to sail through the Northwest Passage. In fact, I know I'll never know what that feels like, but the emotional hype up and like preparation that you must create for yourself, I'll never know that. And so to be denied that chance when you were ready for it and were told you could do it, I will never know. What I can know as a guy who considers you one of my like idols and heroes, frankly, and as someone who I told your story to many times, is every single person that I've told that story, no one has ever like been like, "Oh, that dude sucks."
Yeah,
what a loser! He didn't make it through the Northwest Passage.
But
by himself.
I definitely felt like a bit of a loser. Eventually, having to tuck tail after I was losing my mind and head back for the States, because there is part of me.
This is my point. You felt this way. No one else on planet Earth even passed their mind. They were like, this man is a true pioneer. He's an adventurer. He's doing things that none of us will ever even try. And the fact that he's not dead is amazing.
I'm not dead yet.
He's out there or crazy. We might be a little crazy.
Well, the crazy
not fully
part.
insane.
Yeah.
People are just impressed by you. So that's my first point, is that was not a failure.
Well, I appreciate
That's all I have to say.
I appreciate that.
With that being said, I definitely understand your mental mindset of wanting to do one more and wanting to have, I don't know, a clean voyage or like a plan of something that you plan, that you do it and it completes. I don't think any voyage on a sailboat, what you're talking about, can ever truly be clean.
No, there's the adventure
Ever.
begins when things start going wrong.
But like, I understand what you just said about, a third one.
Yeah.
On Mighty Sparrow.
Sort of something to round it out, because I'm getting up there in the years. I'm 42. You can do this for a long time, but I don't know. There's other things I want to do in life for sure. But yeah, I do feel like, for my sake, mentally, and for Mighty Sparrow's sake, because I know Sparrow is happiest in a big crazy blow out there in the middle of the ocean. She just loves it. She doesn't love going into it, but she loves running with it. And I don't know. I feel like one more big trip, do another book about that, and then figure it out after that. But there's definitely part of me right now that feels incomplete after not being able to do the voyage that I want to do. And it's one of those strange things. One of the aspects of ocean sailing that I've always loved is the fact that is the only free place on this planet. There's no borders out there. There's no governments. There's nothing. It's you and Mother Nature, and that's it. Nobody can tell you anything except when you start getting in close to land, like trying to go through the Northwest Passage. You go out into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, you are 100% on your own, and there's no one who's going to be like, oh, well, you shouldn't be here. You can't be here. It's unsafe. I mean, supposedly the Coast Guard can deem your voyage I forget what they call it. They did it to the guys in the Perfect Storm that were on their West Sail, because the guy who owned the boat didn't want to get off, but his crew did. And so
It just means they don't have to come try to rescue you?
Well, it just means the Coast Guard has to, because his crew members called out the Mayday and they wanted to get off the boat. Basically, the Coast Guard was going to come out. They were going to take everybody off. And so what the Coast Guard did was there's an act called declaring a voyage manifestly unsafe. And so I'm sure if I submitted my passage plan for some of my trips, they'd be like, manifestly unsafe. Blah, you're not going. But but in reality, once you get 100 miles offshore, it's just you and this ocean planet. And it's the biggest portion of our planet by far. And it's just you. I don't know. There's something about being out there. It's just absolutely amazing. And that freedom to go and do whatever you want without anybody. Because, I mean, we live in such a pretty controlled environment. We're in borders and we have things we have to do. If a light turns red, you're supposed to stop. And if it turns green, you're supposed to go. None of that out there.
Yeah, how many stoplights did you encounter? in the
Zero.
Southern Ocean?
Zero, man. It's
And
you
so
know.
to answer your question, dude, at the beginning of all of this about what do I think you should do, I mean, my answer is you got to do what you got to do. But what I will say from me is that I am right now, from when you left on your first voyage, your around the world solo circumnavigation,
Yeah, you were in the
Sparrow.
BVI at that time, right?
and I still am scared for you anytime you go out like you do on your crazy solo trips. Now, though, I will say that I'm more confident in your ability and in Sparrow's seaworthiness.
Yeah. No, that's for sure. I agree
Which,
with
as
you
your
there.
friend, as a guy who I consider one of my best friends,
Darn right.
makes me feel better
Well, that's good.
that you have so much more experience
Yeah,
with
yeah.
her and sailing her. And
Well,
you guys just doing all the miles that you've done together.
It's kind of a double-edged sword though too, because especially when I do the trip up the East Coast or up into the Gulf Stream and stuff, because I've read all these books about just these horror stories of these storms that happen in the Gulf Stream, 80-foot waves and all this sort of stuff. And people, I'll head out into that
You
knowing
get caught in like the Gulf Stream going one way, the wind
Uh-huh.
going the other way.
Yeah,
I've never been out there,
yeah.
but it sounds like it can get really
it can
bad.
get really bad. You can head out on the best forecast you've ever seen, and within 3 days there can be a massive low pressure system that is going to haunt your nightmares for 1,000 years. I mean, it's crazy. And the funny part is, a lot of times that little trip worries me. And everybody's like, "Oh, he'll be fine. We don't even have to worry about him. He'll be all good." And I'm kind of thinking to myself, if I had never gone around the world, people would be concerned, and they'd at least share in my worry a little bit. And I've always thought that's kind of funny, but who knows? Who knows?
It is.
Oh man.
It is funny. You've developed a certain, maybe for better or worse, you've developed a certain level of confidence in yourself.
Well, that's true.
From the outside.
In the sailing ability thing, yeah.
So
But-
with all this being said, with the sailing ability, confidence in Sparrow, your
Right,
previous trips, your successful solo circumnavigation, your self-proclaimed catastrophe. Which is not a
Catastrophe.
catastrophe at all.
The sail to
Northwest
nowhere.
Passage attempt.
Yeah.
What's next? Because the last I heard, before I've seen you now, granted, for the listeners, Jerome and I are close, but I haven't seen Jerome in 2 years.
Yeah.
I live in the British Virgin Islands. He's been on his boat doing his sail. We're just different parts of the world.
Pick right up, right where we left
So
off.
I didn't know, and I found this out today. What his plans are moving forward with his West Sail 32 Mighty Sparrow. I thought he was still planning on selling it, and I don't think that right now that is true.
That is not the plan. Right now, at this point, I'm about 98% sure that I'm going to go ahead with this, but a few other factors do have to fall into place. Regardless, the game plan is to retrace my great-great-great-grandfather, Albert Rand. He was in the phosphates trade, which is basically the fertilizer trade back in the 1800s. And on one of his earlier voyages, while he was the second mate, they left England or somewhere in Europe. They go down the Atlantics, round Cape Horn backwards, go into the Pacific, and they find these islands covered in bird poop, guano, that's like petrified. And they mine all of it, and they bring it back, and they fertilize the fields. And on one voyage, he's over there, he's the second mate. They go, they mine all this guano off this island, and as they're sailing back, they come across another island. It's totally packed full. So, captain on that boat leaves him and another guy and a whole bunch of provisions and says, "You need to guard this island. We're going to sail back to England. We're going to drop all this off, and then we're coming right back to get you." Now, right back should be in air quotes because right back meant probably 9 months. And a whole lot of, I don't know if they're coming back because back then a lot of ships went down at Cape Horn. So he lived out the rest of his years. After about 9 months on the island, another ship from another company came by. They were glad to hitch a ride with all the guano back to, I think, Europe, or I think it might have been going back to Amsterdam. So in some ways, he performed a mutiny because he disobeyed orders to protect the island. But in other ways, it probably saved his life as well. So the idea for this trip, for sort of this final voyage, would be, and he lived out the last of his years with the family and all that sort of stuff, which is what ended up with me being born eventually, in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So what I would do is get the boat ready in Maine in September, sometime mid-October, head off, go down to Portsmouth, then sail down the Atlantics, get to Cape Horn sometime in December, try and round it backwards, which is the trickiest part in a west sail because they hate going upwind. Get into the Pacific, go and find the island, which is just about dead set in the middle. It's east or west of Hawaii and right on the equator. Once I sight it, hopefully be able to hop on it, collect some sand, maybe a rock or two, leave a little flag, and then basically try and make my way back to Portsmouth. So I'd go north, catch the westerlies, come down the Pacific, round Cape Horn for a second time, and then up the Atlantics. And I figure it's about 25 to 30,000 miles, depending on what the wind and the storms do. So it works out to be roughly the same as circumnavigation. The caveat is if I and Mighty Sparrow cannot make it around Cape Horn, if the weather does not cooperate and I'm not able to finagle around these low-pressure systems and actually get that boat upwind, then I'm going to have to turn tail and head into the Indian Ocean, get past New Zealand in the Pacific, then go north, find the island, and then come back down, which would be another circumnavigation. And that would be very similar to the route that Captain Bligh did aboard the Bounty. Either way, it would definitely be an epic voyage, an epic adventure for sure, and something sort of unique. I mean, it's I've never been one for record attempts or anything like that. For me, it's about the journey. It's about, the experience of doing it, and I don't know. I think it would be pretty cool, and it would definitely do an interesting book to try and tell Albert's story, as well as tell my story of what happens on my adventure. So I think if I were able to pull that one off, that I would feel pretty well-rounded as far as a solo sailing career.
What would you be? What like most excites you about this idea?
Honestly, I think one of the coolest parts about it would be to be sailing north in the Pacific, get past the Southern Ocean, because I know what it feels like to exit the Southern Ocean, and it's one of the best feelings in the whole world. You get into the variables, the winds.
It's scary.
It's very scary. Yeah. Because you never, the whole time you're down there, especially in the furious 50s, below 50 degrees south, I mean, all bets are off. If you could get a monster low pressure system, essentially a hurricane with unlimited fetch that could have been building up for a week. It means the amount of distance of open water. Because in the Southern Ocean, that's one of the things that makes it very particularly dangerous, is that it's essentially an infinite amount of fetch because there's no land that gets in the way. Cape Horn,
like an infinite amount for the storm to build?
To build the waves up. Yeah. Because waves are determined by wind speed and fetch and then time. So if you have a storm on Lake Michigan that's blowing 80 knots and it's blowing that for a week, the waves can probably get up to like 40 feet or something. I mean, because there's only a certain amount of fetch. You take that same storm and put it in the Southern Ocean down in the Pacific, and it can probably produce waves of 120 feet. And there's a big, big difference between 40 and 120. I mean,
all of those sound terrible.
Yeah,
I don't want to see any of those waves.
I'll tell you what, though.
I cap at about 8 feet.
Yeah, right. I don't want to see them either, but there is something to be seen when the swell get to be, up in that above 40-foot range. It's insane because when you're in the trough, all you see is one wave. And when you get up to the crest, you see this train of them coming. And
when it's that big, do you have to hand steer, or can you trust your Aries self-steering?
I got Mongo, bud.
And how does Mongo do?
Mongo,
how big can Mongo go?
Well, Mongo somehow, and I think it's not so much Mongo, but I think it's the West Sail and how heavy it is.
Mongo is Jerome's Aries self-steering wind vane.
Yeah.
Is personally named.
I have a feeling anybody listening to this podcast, they know.
Okay, sorry.
They know Mongo real well.
Sorry to clarify.
But who knows? New people might be in there. But yeah, I mean, even when I would get blanketed by the wind down in the troughs, for some reason the West Sail just held its course. It's got that full length, long keel, and it's got this weight to it where it just sort of keeps plodding through. And Mongo does great. I have to be up there when the wind speeds are sustained above 50 knots. That's when I have to be up there to help it along. But again, it also depends on what the conditions are and all that sort of stuff. Sail plan. I think the most I've ever seen sustained is maybe 70 knots, but it was for a very short period of time, and I was definitely on the helm there. But that was bare poles.
Running before it.
Yeah, it was a microburst. It basically was blowing about 40, and I was down to just storm sails and just trying to get out of the Gulf Stream. And then just off in the distance, it looked like the surface of the ocean was being impacted from above. And I'd never seen that before. And then when it hit, and just Mighty Sparrow just went right over.
Did you have to change course? Did you change course?
Yeah, oh yeah.
You saw it coming, and you're like, I don't know what that is.
No, I was just like, what's that? And then it just hit, and the wind speed basically essentially doubled, and the boat heels way over, and I'm at first just holding on, trying not to fall overboard, and then as soon as I was able to turn downwind a little bit, I ran up and just doused the mainsail and took that down because that's all I had at that point. And the boat
you were
just
dousing
kept
the
going.
mainsail in 50 plus knots of wind.
Oh yeah. Well, I was scared too.
I mean, Drome's
adrenaline.
halyards don't come back to the cockpit necessarily. Like he has to go to the mast.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
On Mighty Sparrow to do his sail handling.
Well, and you would have to, in those kind of conditions, you would have to go to the mast anyway, no matter what.
Your halyards came.
Oh,
back
there
to
was
the
so
cockpit.
much pressure on that sail. I had to go up and physically bring the sail down, myself, and then wrap it up and everything. So it was just one of those sort of scary incidences. But I don't know. It was kind of interesting.
Sort of scary, he says.
Yeah.
How about like hell-defining nightmare fuel?
Nah, you'd be fine.
I was sailing on Lake
David.
Michigan one night in like 29 knots with my uncle, and I still haven't forgotten about that to this day.
I
I think I
wake
still
up
have back
and shiver.
pain from the amount of tension and stress that I experienced. That's why I say you are missing screws.
Well, it comes down to your reference point. I mean,
You talked about that earlier.
yeah, to me, being out there is I don't know. I would never say that I'm ready for it, but I'm always open to all sorts of weird experiences.
You've
from,
definitely
from
pushed-
that wind and stuff.
Pushed those boundaries.
Oh yeah, well,
You've opened your brain to a new level of what is possible that few of us, I think, can comprehend.
and it's only because I've spent so much time out there. I mean, I still remember the first few trips down in the Caribbean, and sailing from the British Virgin Islands to Dominica, which is like 275 miles, getting just my butt kicked out there and pulling in, and then finding out that, 2 boats were sunk during the little tiny storm that I went through. And sort of that made me feel a little more confident, and then slowly just building, kind of like you were saying, pushing those limits each time until I think at the end of that season, well, by the end of that season, I had already done like a 30-day trip out in the Atlantic. But I don't know. I still, I will tell you, 100% honest, I still get worried before I leave any trip, and it usually takes me 2-3 days to get in the zone. Then, dude, it's cracking cocktails at sunset. It's sleeping for hours at a time.
Is that a thing you've ever gotten flack about from other sailors? Obviously, you've interacted with a lot of ocean sailors. I feel like drinking and sailing for a lot of ocean-going sailors and, racer, which a lot of them are racers, but I feel like there's like almost a faux pas against it in some circles.
Oh, there definitely
How
is,
does that go?
and there's good reason for it too. And I'm always interested to hear why people have transitioned to cutting off alcohol on their boats.
Like
when they're
fully
out at
no
sea.
alcohol at all during deliveries, regardless of conditions.
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
heard that many
0.
times.
And I've been on all sorts. So the original one, the first Atlantic crossing, I went across with a captain named David Miles, an Englishman. He looked like Dudley Moore. He was hilarious, and he was a yacht master, or no, an ocean master instructor. Fantastic sailor. He had been on the I think he was the crew. He was crew on one of the America's Cup boats for Great Britain, all this sort of stuff. I mean, sailor through and through, old salt. And it was a bumpy passage from Antigua to Spain. And after 2-3 days, all the rest of the crew were seasick. And he looked at me and he was just like, well, I think I'm going to go pour us a couple drinks. And it turned out that basically, I mean, he might have been overindulging a little bit, but he basically was thinking, okay, well, the rest of these fools aren't going to touch anything, so Jerome and I can sort of cross the Atlantic and have a couple drinks every time he's on watch. And I was just basically the first mate on the boat, sort of after a while, and I don't know, it was great. We would only have 2 drinks, maybe a third light one. During a 3-hour period, so not much. You're never getting drunk, but we had great conversations, chats, all this stuff. Enjoyed all these. Just I don't know. I think about that delivery as probably one of the best ones that we've ever done, and that taught me that as long as you keep it in control, you're going to be okay. Now, the caveat though is when I ask people who definitely ban alcohol on boats when they're offshore or out at sea, typically there's a story that goes along with it. For instance, a mutual friend of ours that I won't name,
They were overserved. And
yeah, they were basically out there. They were having too much fun. They were just island hopping between the Caribbean, but it was an overnight trip, and they had been overserved by themselves out on that boat, and then some weather came in, and I think some things like broke or whatever, but it was just a fiasco because they definitely were drunk. And yeah, that's a serious problem. You never want to be drunk on it because, I mean, you never know. The cloud line that you see right now in 2 hours from now, because you're not paying attention to it and you're just tossing back beers, could change into a horrific squall with 60-knot winds, and suddenly you've actually got to make some real deal moves. So I don't know. It's one of those things where you definitely have to control it, and I do understand why captains will cut it off, because a lot of times they're taking on crew that they don't know. And there is always a risk that you give some guy 1 beer at sunset, and all of a sudden he starts thinking, well, maybe I'll just go into my bag and grab that little pint of rum that I have, and then all of a sudden, because some people just can't control themselves at all, and you don't know that. It's not like you're going to put that on your resume, like, yeah, give me an inch, I'll take a mile, that sort of stuff.
I love drinking beer.
Yeah, right.
Put that out there first.
One beer is never enough.
I think that's a good explanation. That makes a lot of sense. And so for your sail here that you're planning, the third sail from. Where in the States? You're going to leave from Maine? You're going to go down to
New Hampshire.
Great Grandpa's? You're going to try to follow? Because that was kind of the theme of the first route, Portsmouth.
Well, the first one I left from Gloucester just because we had the family connections there. And Gloucester's just, it has, that's where Alfred Johnson left.
Like American
Joshua
maritime
Slocum.
history.
Yeah, I mean, it's the most epic seaport on the East Coast.
So you're going to leave from New Hampshire. Ideally, go down around Cape Horn to the west.
Yeah.
Backwards.
Into the teeth of the monster.
Hopefully, you can get some good wind. Go up into the Pacific. Find the island. Kind of circumnavigate the south. You going to stop anywhere else?
Nope. I don't even know if I'll actually go on land there. I mean, honestly, for me, originally when I thought about this, just the idea of sighting the island, seeing this place that this distant relative had to live on and was marooned on essentially for 9 months of his life is enough. I just want to see it with my 2 eyes. I mean, I've talked about that in the book where There's something so special about spending weeks and weeks at sea and seeing the same exact horizon, and then all of a sudden there's just that one dark thing there, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you're watching this island essentially grow out of the ocean. And it's for anybody that's never done it and probably never will, it's one of the most fascinating things to witness. And it's all in slow motion because it takes hours for it to happen, and it unfolds slowly. But man,
Still there?
so cool.
Oh, it's still there.
Still there.
We're
Still
getting
there.
closer.
Give me the binoculars. I got to take a closer look.
Okay, cool. So around that island, no other stops. Come back down around Cape Horn now to the east.
Yep, the
Sailing
easy
east.
way. Quote unquote easy
Then
way.
back up into the southern Atlantic, and then back up straight through the Atlantic back to New Hampshire.
Yep. Exactly.
That's the plan.
That's the game plan.
How long?
Yeah.
2 questions.
Shoot.
How long do you think that sail is going to take? Like, estimate, obviously, who knows? But
Probably-
how long do you estimate or plan, prepare for the sail to take?
I'm assuming 8 to 9 months again.
So
Only
200
because
like 40 to 270 days.
something like that. And it's going to depend a lot on
The
how
rounding
far
of
north I have to go. Because once I leave that island, I basically could either beat through the easterlies and try and get out into the Pacific and then go south into the Southern Ocean. But my idea, because I haven't sailed there, would be to go north of Hawaii, catch the westerlies, and then come down the Pacific. So
so once you get to this island, you can't just like turn back
Turn
down,
back around
because
and
then you're
go.
going to be going straight into these easterly winds that you just rode to it.
yeah,
You're gonna have
yeah.
to like see this island, then go farther up, and get a better angle on these east winds.
Exactly.
back
Yeah.
down.
Because so for the listeners, just around the planet, the very basic, wind pattern is that around the middle of our Earth, the winds are going from the east to the west, and those are called the easterly trades. And then just above them and just below them are the westerlies, which go from the west to the east, but those are typically very strong, stormy seas. So what you do is you leave the trade winds. If you want to get from west to east, you get into either the north or the south, and you just ride that tip and basically coast your way, and then you drop back into it. And it's just because, the boat that I have, the West Sail, it just doesn't like going upwind. It doesn't do it well. I don't want to make it do it. It's uncomfortable for me. True gentlemen only sail downwind. You know that.
It's a darn truth.
So, there are other routes that you could sort of take. I could probably cut through the islands, get into the Southern Ocean near New Zealand, and then go all the way across the Pacific. But I've already done that once, and it's not very pleasurable. So I figure go north, go up past Hawaii, and in the end, there's something of, I think a lot of ocean sailors, they might not admit it, but eventually I want to be able to open up a world map and just have it covered in ink. And that's the ego talking
For
for
those of you who
sure.
don't know, Jerome plots all of his sails on a map with literally pen.
It's actually called a chart, Dabbler.
You can look at his chart and see where
There's
he's
a
been
tone
on
there,
all
bud.
of these sails. It's pretty cool.
Well, and it just, I don't know. It's there's something about it when I look at it. There's especially after the last trip, because the North Atlantic is just absolutely covered, and the South Atlantic as well. I've done like 3 trips through that. The Pacific is just barely touched, and it's only one little line that goes from New Zealand straight to Cape Horn, and there's a whole and the Pacific, the entire surface of land on our planet would fit in the Pacific Ocean. That's how big it is. So cutting a big meaty line right through the middle of it, going north, going south, going across, I think that would be pretty cool.
8 to 9 months. When do you want to leave? What's your time? Like that's how long it's going to take. What is your when are you going to do this?
Well, it's all sort of dictated on the most difficult part, which is getting around Cape Horn the wrong way. And so ideally, Cape Horn is the most tame in late December to January. That's sort of the peak of the summertime down there. And if you catch it on a good year, it can be really tame. If you catch it on a bad year, it doesn't matter when you're there. It's going to be just hell on earth. So ideally, if I left towards the end of October, I'd have, or towards mid-October. The boat sails a lot faster than I used to sail it just because I've learned more about it. So I think I would be able to, I'd like to enter 50 degrees south, which is around where the Falkland Islands are, sometime around December 1st through the 15th. And that would give me sort of a good month to be able to get around Cape Horn at the peak of the summer cycle down there.
And that's the like optimal time.
Optimal time, yeah. Statistically, that's where you're going to get.
The seasons are flipped, right? Like that's summer.
So that's summer, yeah. So think about it. December 21st, I think, is the summer solstice down there, because that's the winter solstice up here, right?
Meaning though that's the calmest time of the ocean.
Yeah. For the sun, yeah, exactly.
Which is
so
obviously when you want to go around.
So that's when you want to do it. And now, obviously, coming back around, it'll be another few months. So I'll be rounding probably in April or May, going the other direction.
So
but I've already done April once. Yeah.
So you're going like fall rounding.
Yeah, and I got lucky
I can't
last
imagine
time.
You don't want to be down there during winter.
No, you definitely don't. I mean, it's still doable. People have done it. There's an Australian guy who's got, I think, like one of the records for just most incredible sail, where he basically left Australia and he did 3 circumnavigations, 2 west to east and 1 east to west.
Without stopping?
Without stopping, yeah. He was out there for 645 days. John Sanders, yeah. And so what he would do though, tons, yeah. I mean, he's done like 11 or 12. He's probably spent more time sailing solo through the Southern Ocean than anybody.
I mean, none of these sound fun, but that sounds like especially not fun.
No, I know. Well, and it's a different trip when the guys, when the Kiwis and the Australians and stuff, when they do these trips, they do them very different, because I think compared to what the Americans and not many Americans do it, but the Europeans do, we're leaving from 40, 50 degrees north and we go down. These guys leave Australia. They're already in the Southern Ocean. They do their whip around, and usually they'll come up in the Atlantic, cross the equator, and then go right back down.
Just across the equator, or is that like an ocean current thing?
No, just across it to sort of quantify the fact that they've circumnavigated. And I mean, it's still the meat and potatoes is the same. You're in the Southern Ocean and battling through and putting yourself out there. But there is something to be said for dealing with things like the Gulf Stream, the North Atlantic, the doldrums, all that sort of stuff that, I don't know, I think it just sort of adds to the well-roundedness. I mean, that's why in the 1968 Golden Globe, the rule was you could leave from anywhere as long as it was north of 40 degrees. So that's what I always sort of tried to follow, because I felt like that was a really good sort of gold standard for sailing around the world. I mean, it's,
Yeah, I mean, that race has kind of defined the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, those guys, geez, just tough as nails. So who knows? But we'll have to see. I mean, I'll update as soon as I know I'm going to pull the trigger 100%. Then I'm sure I'll do a little update and everything like that, and I'll let everybody know what's going on.
Are there any major preparations that you have to do?
Not too much. I need to.
Like, are you ready to go? Like, let's say you had to go. Like, we've got the news, whatever. I don't know, something insane. But like, you have a week to go. Sparrow's ready in Maine. You're here in Michigan.
Oh man, yeah.
Could you pull trigger and bounce?
Yeah. I mean, I pretty much could. I would have to do. It'd probably take me one day of provisioning, and storing. I do have to build. So in the past, on the first trip, I built a huge cabinet section to house all the supplies and spare parts and all that sort of stuff. This time, though, I think I would build half of one of those so that I could have 2 different bunks. And that little project will probably take a couple of days to complete.
Why do you want 2 bunks?
Just because I sleep so much better in the down, like sort of the downhill, so to speak, bunk. Like if the boat is tilted over on its side, then if I'm on the low side, that's good. But if I'm on the high side, I can never really get comfortable. So I figure might as well just make 2 of them right next to each other, and And that way I sort of have my choice. Because if you can only get like an hour or two of sleep because of the weather, it's really important that you can actually hop in that bunk and crash right out. And there were a lot of times where I could not do that before. And so, it's about trying to stay comfortable out there for sure.
So the last question I have, we've been talking, I don't even know how long we've been talking. Do you have a timer on this?
Yeah, we're well past an hour. So we're
we have
good.
to edit this down already. So the last question I have, you can edit this out, but I know there's a lot of people out there who want to know this question, and we kind of talked about it earlier.
Ooh, a clincher.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who want to know this. It's because, I imagine you're aware of this, but you are living a very different life than almost all other Americans that we know. You're living an extremely different life.
Like right now or just normal?
Literally, not even talking pandemic, like talking normal. Like you are on a different path. This isn't the path. You don't hear about this path growing up in middle school of going to be a sailor and sailing.
It's not exactly the normal, yes.
This isn't the college and the job and the fence and the kids and the house. Like you're doing something that's in a different path. And so I think a lot of listeners want to know, like, how do you finance this? How do you afford to live like you're living?
Okay. Well, initially to be able to, buy the boat and go for the first trip and have a year of figuring things out and all that sort of stuff. It took me 3 years to save all the money I needed for that.
And this might be more than you're willing to say. You don't have to say it. Are you willing to say like how much that cost you? Like what you were willing to put in?
The first trip along with the boat was about $100,000. So all said and told, done and done, it was about $100,000. And I think of it as money well spent. I'm yet to recoup even a portion of that, but I was on my way when I was doing all the talks. Unfortunately, that stopped for a while. But to be able to now, the book has helped to be able to continue to work on the boat and plot and plan for that second voyage, and actually paid for most of that as well,
and
which
this
was
is
nice.
What Jerome wrote. Sailing into Oblivion. Available anywhere you get your books. It's on Amazon in hard copy, or it's paperback.
Paperback, Kindle, everything.
You can get it paperback, you can get it on Kindle, but he also has an audiobook. If you're into Audible, you can listen to Jerome tell his own story, which is awesome. So get the book, Sailing into Oblivion by Jerome Rand, The Voyage of the Mighty Sparrow.
Thank you, Dobbs. That's so good. I feel like maybe you ought to take over this podcast when I'm gone. I'll leave you the microphone.
I can give people updates.
Well,
that's send me text. I could do like a weekly little update thing.
And that's sort of an interesting aspect of the trip, because on the last one we were able to raise just over $6,000 for the MS Society, and one of my good
fundraiser.
friends.
This was not going towards you financing your sale.
Oh,
no.
Yeah, this is
fundraising. It
goes right to these guys, and they've, I think, over the reason I sort of joined up with them, they seem to be the sort of leader in collecting donations and getting to research and all that sort of stuff for MS. But I think they're closing in on or over $1 billion. I mean, they've been a foundation since like 1945 or something like that. But a good friend of mine was diagnosed with MS when he was in his early 40s. It's a big time game changer. And I always said that some of the struggles that I go through out there pale in comparison to what he deals with on a daily basis, and he still keeps on going. So it kind of prods me in the backside, as old Robin Knox Johnson used to say, to keep going and keep pushing. So hopefully, if I do pull the trigger, then we'll be able to do this one. And instead of it being a sort of botched voyage, this one will go the distance. And because who knows, if I would have been able to keep going, I would just now be getting back from that trip.
That's crazy to think
about. It's pretty weird to think about, isn't it?
Be sitting here in the woods.
Yeah, exactly. Well, maybe if I would have made a speedy return up the Atlantics, I could have been back. But who knows? I doubt it. It probably would have taken a bit longer. So who knows? We'll have to see. But man, it's been so good to just chat.
It's been great. So give the people a summary about the next voyage, because that's what they want to know.
Well,
When do
we
you
already
leave?
went over that.
Just a quick, give him the hitters. How long? When do you leave?
All right.
Boom.
Possible next voyage, leaving this October, raising money for the MS Society again, heading down the Atlantics around the dastardly Cape Horn, backwards into the grip of the monster, up the Pacific, find this old island that Captain Albert Rand was marooned on, a distant relative of mine, north of Hawaii, back towards the U.S., down the Pacific again, around Cape Horn in the fall, and then back up the Atlantics to return to Portsmouth, hopefully by about June or July of 2022. That's the game plan, to round off the old solo adventures of Jerome Rand.
All aboard.
All aboard.
The West Sail 32.
Oh man! Well, Dobbs, it's been great having you on here. I kind of wanted to peel back some more layers of the Dabbler, but I know we are sort of running out of time.
Yeah, the people aren't interested in me. It's time to go hit the lake.
I think
Let's
it is.
go get on the
I think we'll
water.
have to figure out. And tonight we might, if a little south breeze picks up, Dabbler and I might be out there dabbling on the lake. Little 22-foot boat. Be nice.
Just need some breeze.
We just need some breeze right now. I was telling my mom the other day about how, we'd be over there at Michigania partying it up, having a good time, and then all of a sudden I'd hear the leaves start to shake in the trees, and I knew the wind was coming. Because up here, a north breeze always fails you. It always turns right off after sunset. But a south breeze stays up all night. And, man, that would come out, and I'd come up to Dobbs, and I'd be like, the trees are talking to me. He knew exactly what was going on. All right, Dobbs. Well, any parting words for the audience? Any little inspiration or anything? Because like I said, we didn't really get to peel back your layers, but you are a guy who has, you went to U of M, you graduated.
Oh, they don't care about
this.
Come on.
Let me just surmise you just for a second. So super smart, one of the most charismatic staff I've ever been able to work with. I mean, throw Dobbs at any problem, and that problem, if it's not going to be at least solved, the people involved in it are going to enjoy themselves. That kind of guy, and brings energy to every team. I mean, the list goes on and on. Then he goes and he rocks down to the Caribbean, works down there, fits in with, I was blessed by being able to be invited into the local community down there, and I've never seen anybody else do that as well as you did. People just absolutely love this guy, and now you're still doing it. The future is bright. I feel like you got to wear shades. Throw back to the 80s.
I do all the time.
But just as parting wisdom, as somebody who I see is pretty much taking on life and doing it the right way, what would you tell anybody who's kind of trying to figure it out, trying to be like, well, what should I do? I don't know what to do. What would you tell somebody like that?
What I tell somebody like that is, I would say, it's a saying I learned a long time ago, and it may not make exact sense, but it's that rain don't stop the storm. Life's hard. It's not easy. It's raining a ton of the time. It's a little wet outside, and it's a little damp, and it may not be perfect. It may even be bad. But that doesn't have to stop you being a storm of life and grabbing the most that you can. You should be the lightning. You should be the thunder. You should be the excitement. You should be the enthusiasm. Anytime you find yourself waking up on a day and you are like not enjoying it or not excited for it, I advise you to take some time and just like think about why you feel that way, and talk to your friends and talk to your family and just evaluate it and bring your own storm, because you only get one shot. And you might as well make the most.
No truer words were ever spoken right there. I feel invigorated right now.
Rain don't stop the storm.
Rain don't stop the storm. Dobbs, thanks for coming on, man. I really
Sailing
appreciate
into
it.
Oblivion podcast. Sailing into Oblivion book again. Anywhere you get
All
your
right,
books,
you pitched it up.
Amazon
You-
Kindle. The Audible book is what I most recommend. Boom.
Oh, man. Thank you, Dobbs. Really appreciate it. And looking forward to hanging out a little more, man.
Let's go on the lake.
All right, it's time. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. And if you enjoy the podcast and want to support it, just go to podbean.com and you can become a patron and keep the show on the air. Also, if you like the music at the beginning, the album is called Deep Teal, and the artist is Adrian Edson. It's available on Amazon Music. And if you want the full story of the trip around the world, the book, the Kindle book, and the audiobook can all be found on Amazon.com. Sailing into Oblivion, the solo nonstop voyage of the mighty Sparrow. Fair winds and following seas.